community, can I tell y'all something? Real quick, before I get started, let me say this. When I call you community, it's an aspiration framed as a greeting. Community is earned, not appointed. Culture Kinesis work, the work of cultural reimagination and liberated leadership, exists in a space that Bell Hooks calls radical openness, a space of profound possibility. I know that we can get to community, and so I address you as such in anticipation of that moment. So community, I can't pass a dandelion, I'm talking about the white fluffy ones, without making a wish on it. The last time this happened was yesterday. A passerby noticed me, smiled, and offered this question. Isn't it hard to believe that they're weeds? It's not hard to believe. Dandelions are wild plants that thrive where they shouldn't, that proliferate in gardens where they have not been intentionally cultivated. They are nature's counter-narrative. And just like any idea or individual that puts pressure on toxic ideologies, that makes the status quo less secure, dandelions are discouraged. Now, the cultivated plants have had deliberate space made for them within gardens. They represent the way that things have always been done. The dandelions exist as a perceived threat, a foil, to the cultivated plant's ability to become more and more deeply rooted, and they are understood to be a distraction from that beauty. But who decided that dandelions were weeds? And who decided that they deserve no space in the cultivated gardens? Perhaps the weeds are the ones that we should watch closely, the ones that we should be most focused on learning from. But instead, we destroy them because they threaten the status quo. And isn't that just how we treat ideas and individuals who seek to disrupt current cultures of inequity? Here's what I love and admire most about dandelions. Dandelions persist. You can try to pull them up, but if you're trying to eradicate them altogether, you better pull out that whole root. Dandelions strategically interrupt. You can try to pull them up, but they're anchored by a taproot that can break up seemingly impenetrable soil, making space for newness. And dandelions proliferate. You can try again to pull them up, but the slightest touch will send those seeds flying to land elsewhere and to spread their gospel of liberation. So I chose a dandelion, a weed, as Culture Kinesis logo and symbol because of what they teach us about culture and how it can be reimagined. When we are replanting our proverbial workplace gardens, and we've established that we want racial equity to thrive in our soil, have we even renegotiated what constitutes a weed? The answer is almost always no. Because if we had, our cultivated gardens would look much more like fields of dandelions. And they don't yet. Yes, there may be some new cultivated plants. Perhaps the garden is looking a little more colorful and diverse than it did last year, and that's beautiful. But below the soil, they look a lot like gardens did last decade, and the decade before that, and the decade before that. We will not get to racial equity without embracing the weeds, the folks and the ideas that seek to disrupt the status quo in a meaningful way. Dandelions reflect the reality that culture by nature is not fixed. As individuals and groups and communities and times change, culture also changes. A natural process. However, when those in power erect impasses, culture either stagnates or it moves in non-natural ways. If we rectified the harmful ideologies that bolster those impasses, we could expect culture to flow and to evolve in the spirit of liberation. The work of Culture Kinesis is to encourage the planting and cultivating of weeds, because those weeds interrupt the status quo and make it very difficult for it to become cemented. What most impedes our culture's kinesis? It's our desire to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion work without tending to the cracks in our cultural foundation. It's our unpreparedness to do the intentional community building work with our colleagues that sets us up to be successful in our diversity, equity, and inclusion pursuits. And it's our hesitation to do deep exploration into the soil of our institutions to get at the root of what ails us culturally. I am a weed, proudly so. And I bring that spirit to my everyday work as a leadership coach, as an organizational culture consultant, as a community convener, as a creative. It's work that I've done for over 15 years as an educator and nonprofit executive that I was constantly told by the cultivated plants around me that there wasn't time for. It's work that goes so much deeper than diversity, equity, inclusion into the realm of legacy and how we intend to leave behind much better cultural creations than those we inherited. So again, at Culture Kinesis, we very intentionally cultivate weeds. Now, societally, we typically understand culture to refer to shared patterns of behavior among a specific group of folks. The lesser known, less often used definition of culture is a verb, meaning to maintain something in conditions suitable for growth. In other words, to cultivate something. But if what is blooming and growing in the cultivated gardens isn't in pursuit of racial equity, we simply need to change our cultivation strategy and not just let them grow where they may, meaning the dandelions, and wish them good luck, but to cultivate them. What is your organization cultivating? More of the same? Or will this be the year that you plant new seeds? This month, I'm spending time with one of the best weeds to ever do it, Bell Hooks. In her essay titled, Choosing the Margin as a Space of Radical Openness, she states, I am located in the margin. I make a definite distinction between that marginality which is imposed by oppressive structures and that marginality one chooses as a site of resistance, as location of radical openness and possibility. This site of resistance is continually formed in that segregated culture of opposition that is our critical response to domination, end quote. I love that. Radical openness and possibility. I know nothing that symbolizes these more perfectly than a dandelion, a weed that has zero interest in being told that it can't take root. To be a weed is to have been marginalized time and time again, but to recognize that there is truly no destroying you. So next time you see a dandelion, make that wish and sow some new seeds in the garden that you're in.